Admiral Hyunwoo stood on the bridge of the Terran flagship Indomitable and watched the stars through the massive viewport. The ship hummed quietly around him as hundreds of crew members worked at their stations. Behind him stretched a fleet of 47 ships carrying the hopes and dreams of humanity into the unknown reaches of space. They had been traveling for 3 months since leaving the outer colonies, and today would change everything. The communications officer turned in her chair and called out across the bridge, "Admiral, we are receiving those signals again. They are much stronger now." Hyunwoo nodded and walked over to her station. For the past week, they had been picking up strange transmissions from somewhere ahead of them. The signals were clearly artificial and clearly not human. After 150 years of expansion into space, humanity had finally found proof that they were not alone in the universe. Dr. Ji-hai hurried onto the bridge carrying a tablet filled with data. She was the chief scientist for the expedition and had spent the last week analyzing every piece of information they could gather about these mysterious signals. Her eyes were bright with excitement as she approached the Admiral. "Sir, I have finished my analysis of the transmissions. They are definitely from an advanced civilization. The mathematics and physics in their signals are far beyond what we expected to find." Hyunwoo took the tablet and scrolled through her findings. The data showed complex mathematical patterns and what appeared to be star charts. Most interesting were the references to multiple star systems that seemed to be connected in some kind of network. "How many different sources are we talking about, Doctor?" "At least 12 distinct transmission points, possibly more." "Admiral, I think we are looking at evidence of a galactic civilization. This is not just one alien species on one world. This appears to be a confederation of many different worlds working together." Ji-hai pointed to a section of her analysis. The signals reference something they call the Galactic Harmony Confederation. From what I can decode, they have been in contact with each other for thousands of years. Captain Taemin entered the bridge at that moment. He commanded the elite marine unit known as the Iron Wolves and was responsible for the security of the fleet. His weathered face showed the scars of many battles during the expansion wars on Mars and the outer colonies. "Admiral, my teams are ready for anything we might encounter. But I have to ask, what are our rules of engagement if these aliens prove hostile?" Hyunwoo handed the tablet back to Dr. Ji-hai and considered the question. "We follow the Terran contact protocols. We approach with peaceful intentions and open hands. But Captain, make sure your people are ready. We have no idea what we are walking into out here." Engineer Su-jin looked up from her station near the weapons control systems. She was young but brilliant and had designed many of the modifications that kept the fleet running at peak efficiency. "Admiral, our weapons systems are operating at full capacity. If we do run into trouble, we can defend ourselves. But sir, if their technology is as advanced as Dr. Ji-hai suggests, our weapons might not be enough. Then we better hope they are as interested in peace as we are." Hyunwoo replied. He activated the fleet-wide communication system, and his voice carried to every ship in the flotilla. "Attention all vessels. This is Admiral Hyunwoo speaking. Today we make history. In approximately 6 hours we will arrive at the source of the alien transmissions. All ships will maintain formation and follow my lead. We go in peace, but we go in strength. Remember that you represent not just Earth, but all of humanity. Make us proud." Across the fleet, crew members prepared for the most important moment in human history. In the engineering sections, technicians ran final checks on all systems. In the marine quarters, soldiers cleaned their weapons and checked their armor. In the laboratories, scientists prepared their instruments to record every detail of first contact. Dr. Ji-hai returned to her lab to continue analyzing the alien signals. The more she studied them, the more impressed she became with the sophistication of the civilization they were about to meet. The mathematical concepts embedded in the transmissions suggested a species that had mastered physics and engineering far beyond human capabilities. Yet something bothered her about the patterns she was seeing. The signals seemed almost too perfect, too organized. There was no chaos or disagreement in the transmissions, no signs of the political debates or scientific arguments that filled human communications. Meanwhile, far ahead of the human fleet, other conversations were taking place. On a massive station orbiting a gas giant in the Kepler system, two beings discussed the approaching humans. Veltar was tall and thin with skin that looked like polished crystal. His species had been part of the Confederation for over 2,000 years, and he served as a senior diplomat. Beside him stood Quinda, shorter but more muscular, with features that suggested her people had once been warriors before joining the galactic community. "The newcomers will arrive soon," Veltar said in a voice that sounded like wind chimes. "Their transmissions suggest they are a young species. They call themselves humans and claim to come from a world they name Earth." Quinda studied the tactical displays showing the approaching human fleet. 47 ships. Their technology appears primitive compared to our standards, but they are well organized. My analysts note that many of their vessels appear to be warships. Why would a peaceful species need so many weapons? Perhaps they are simply cautious, Veltar suggested. Many young species are fearful when they first venture into deep space. Once they understand the benefits of joining our Confederation, they usually abandon such aggressive tendencies. Quinda was not convinced. She had studied the transmissions from the human fleet and noticed things that worried her. The humans spoke of expansion and exploration with an enthusiasm that seemed dangerous. Most species were content to develop their home systems and trade peacefully with their neighbors. These humans talked about claiming new worlds and pushing ever further into unknown space. "What do we know about their home world?" Quinda asked. Veltar consulted his records. Earth appears to be a world of great diversity, multiple climates, vast oceans, and an unusual number of predatory species. The humans themselves show several concerning traits. They have forward-facing eyes like hunters, muscular builds that suggest physical combat capabilities, and their cultural transmissions contain many references to warfare and competition. "Then they are like the Crethans were," Quinda said grimly. "We know how that ended." The Crethans had been the last aggressive species the Confederation had encountered, nearly 300 years earlier. They had refused to accept the peaceful guidance of the Confederation and had been eliminated as a threat to galactic harmony. Since then, the galaxy had known perfect peace under the wise leadership of the Confederation Council. Back on the Indomitable, the hours passed quickly as the fleet approached its destination. Admiral Hyunwoo called his senior staff to the briefing room for final preparations. The room was small but functional, with a large table surrounded by chairs and a holographic display system at one end. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are about to make first contact with an alien civilization. Dr. Ji Hai, what should we expect?" The scientist activated the holographic display and showed the data they had gathered. "Based on their transmissions, we will likely encounter beings that are highly advanced technologically, but also very organized socially. Their signals suggest a civilization that has achieved perfect harmony between many different species." Captain Taman leaned forward in his chair. "That sounds almost too good to be true, Doctor. In my experience, when something seems perfect, it usually means someone is working very hard to make it appear that way." "What are you suggesting, Captain?" Hyunwoo asked. "I am suggesting we stay alert, sir. Perfect harmony usually requires someone to be in charge and everyone else to follow orders. The question is, what happens to those who do not want to follow orders?" Sujin looked up from her technical readouts. "Sir, I have been analyzing their technology signatures. Their power systems are incredibly advanced, but they seem designed for efficiency rather than raw power, almost like they have never needed to build weapons or defensive systems. Or like they have never needed to use them because no one has ever challenged them," Taemin added quietly. Hyunwoo considered this information carefully. The human fleet was about to encounter a civilization that was technologically superior and had apparently achieved perfect peace across multiple star systems. It sounded like paradise, but something about it made him uneasy. In his experience, paradise usually came with a price, and that price was often freedom. The communication officer's voice came over the intercom. "Admiral, we are receiving a transmission from the alien source. They are requesting that we stop our approach and identify ourselves." Hyunwoo returned to the bridge and took his position in the command chair. Around him, his crew worked efficiently at their stations, ready for whatever might happen next. Through the viewport, he could see a massive structure ahead of them, larger than anything humanity had ever built. It was beautiful and terrible at the same time, a monument to the power and achievement of an ancient civilization. "Open a channel," he ordered. The massive alien station grew larger as the human shuttle approached its docking bay. Admiral Hyunwoo sat in the passenger section with Dr. Ji-hai and Captain Taemin, watching through the small windows as they entered a structure that dwarfed anything humanity had ever imagined. The station was easily 50 kilometers long and covered in smooth surfaces that seemed to glow with their own inner light. Dr. Ji-hai pressed her face against the window, her scientific curiosity overriding her nervousness. "Look at the construction, techniques. Those surfaces appear to be grown rather than built, and the energy readings my instruments are picking up suggest power systems that could supply an entire planet." Captain Taemin was less impressed with the beauty and more concerned with the tactical situation. His trained eye noted the placement of what appeared to be weapon systems and the fact that their shuttle was being guided by tractor beams rather than flying under its own power. "They are not taking any chances with us. We are completely under their control from the moment we entered their space." Admiral Hyunwoo nodded, but kept his expression calm. "Remember, we are here as diplomats. Stay alert but do not appear threatening. We want them to see us as potential partners, not enemies." The shuttle settled into a docking bay that was filled with soft light and a breathable atmosphere. As they stepped out of their craft, the three humans found themselves facing a reception committee of 5 alien beings. The first thing that struck them was how tall and graceful the aliens appeared. They moved with a flowing motion that seemed almost like dancing, and their crystalline skin reflected the light in beautiful patterns. The lead alien approached them with what appeared to be a welcoming gesture. When he spoke, his voice had a musical quality that was pleasant to hear. "I am Veltar, Senior Diplomat of the Confederation. These are my colleagues who will assist in our discussions. Welcome to Harmonic Convergence Station." Admiral Hyunwoo stepped forward and offered, his hand in the traditional human greeting. "I am Admiral Hyunwoo, representing Earth and the Terran Colonial Fleet. This is Dr. Ji-hai, our chief scientist, and Captain Taemin, our security officer." Veltar looked at the offered hand with what might have been confusion, before carefully extending his own hand to touch the Admiral's palm. The contact was brief and seemed to make the alien uncomfortable. "Your customs are interesting. Please follow me to our meeting chamber where we can speak more comfortably." As they walked through the station corridors, Dr. Ji-hai could not help but ask questions about everything she saw. "The material composition of your walls appears to be organic. Are your ships actually living creatures?" She pulled out a small scanner to take readings, but stopped when she noticed all the aliens had frozen in place. Quinda, who had been silent until now, spoke in a voice that carried clear authority. "Your companion carries scanning devices. This is considered highly aggressive behavior in Confederation space. All species understand that such actions require explicit permission." Dr. Ji-hai looked confused and slightly hurt. "I apologize. I am a scientist, and it is natural for me to want to learn about your amazing technology. I meant no offense." "Of course you did not," Veltar said quickly, though his tone suggested he was not entirely convinced. "You are a young species and do not yet understand proper protocols. Dr. Ji-hai, is it not? Your name suggests you are a female of your species, yet you carry yourself with the confidence of a warrior. This is unusual." Captain Taemin stepped slightly forward, his hand unconsciously moving toward where his weapon would normally be. In human society, both males and females can be scientists, warriors, or leaders. We do not limit people based on gender. This statement seemed to disturb the aliens even more. Quinda exchanged glances with Veltar before speaking again. "Your species allows females to engage in aggressive activities. This explains much about your warlike nature." "Warlike nature?" Admiral Hyunwoo asked. "We came here seeking peaceful contact. What gives you the impression that we are warlike?" Veltar gestured for them to continue walking as he explained. "Your physical characteristics are those of predator species. Forward-facing eyes designed for hunting, muscular builds adapted for combat, and most concerning, your cultural transmissions contain frequent references to warfare, competition, and conquest. They entered a large circular chamber with a domed ceiling that showed a real-time view of the stars outside the station. The humans were invited to sit on what appeared to be living furniture that adjusted itself to their bodies. The aliens remained standing, which had the effect of making them appear even taller and more imposing. Dr. G. Hai tried to salvage the conversation by focusing on science. Your technology is fascinating. The way you have mastered biological engineering suggests your species evolved very differently from humans. Can you tell me about your home world? Our species evolved on a world of great beauty and harmony, Veltar explained. We learned long ago that cooperation and peace lead to greater advancement than competition and conflict. When we encountered other species in our region of space, we taught them these same principles. And if they did not want to learn? Captain Taman asked quietly. Quinda answered this time, her voice carrying a note of pride. All species eventually understand the benefits of harmony. Those that do not are helped to understand through various encouragement methods. The way she said encouragement made all three humans uncomfortable. Admiral Hyunwoo decided to address the issue directly. What exactly do you mean by encouragement methods? Veltar seemed to realize that Quinda had said more than she should have. Please understand, we have encountered 17 species over the past 2,000 years. All of them eventually chose to join our confederation and enjoy the benefits of peaceful cooperation. We simply help them understand what is best for their continued survival. Dr. Ji Hai leaned forward with interest. 17 species in 2,000 years? That seems like a very small number for a galaxy this size. Are there no other civilizations? There were others, Quinda said simply. They chose not to join us. The silence that followed this statement was heavy with implication. Captain Taemin was the first to speak. What happened to the species that chose not to join you? They are no longer a concern, Veltar said in a tone that suggested the topic was closed. But let us speak of more pleasant matters. We are here to evaluate your species for possible inclusion in our confederation. Evaluate us? Admiral Hyunwoo asked. We were hoping for an exchange of information between equals, not an evaluation. This statement seemed to shock the aliens. Veltar and Quinda exchanged rapid communications in their own language before Veltar responded. Admiral, surely you understand that a young species such as yours cannot be considered equal to a civilization that has achieved perfect harmony across multiple star systems. We are here to determine if humanity can be taught to abandon its aggressive tendencies and join our peaceful community. Captain Taemin stood up slowly, his movement causing several alien guards who had been hidden in the shadows to step forward. And what if we are not interested in abandoning our nature to join your community? Quinda's crystalline features hardened. That would be unfortunate. No species has ever refused our guidance once they understood the alternatives. Dr. Ji Hai tried to redirect the conversation back to scientific topics. Perhaps we could start with smaller exchanges. We could share information about our respective technologies and cultures. There is so much we could learn from each other. Learning is good, Veltar agreed. But first you must demonstrate your willingness to accept our guidance. We have prepared a series of standard evaluation protocols that all potential member species must complete. Admiral Hyunwoo felt his patience beginning to wear thin. What kind of evaluation protocols? Quinda activated a holographic display that showed detailed scans of the human delegation. First, we must understand your psychological makeup. Our scans show that all three of you display aggressive thought patterns and what we term dominance behaviors. These characteristics must be modified before you can be considered for membership. Modified how? Captain Taemin asked, though his tone suggested he already suspected the answer. Through genetic therapy and behavioral conditioning, Veltar explained, as if discussing the weather. The process is quite painless and results in a much more peaceful and cooperative mindset. All member species have undergone these improvements. The three humans looked at each other in growing alarm. Dr. Ji Hai was the first to find her voice. You are talking about changing our fundamental nature as a species. That is not improvement, that is genocide. Such an emotional response, Quinda observed with what might have been scientific interest. This is exactly the kind of aggressive thinking that must be corrected. Humans show all the classic signs of a predator species that poses a threat to galactic harmony. Admiral Hyunwoo stood up slowly and straightened his uniform. I think there has been a fundamental misunderstanding here. Humanity did not come to this meeting seeking to join your confederation. We came seeking contact between equals. We are not interested in being evaluated, modified, or improved according to your standards. The aliens seemed genuinely confused by this statement. The guest quarters on Harmonic Convergence Station were beautiful and comfortable, but they were still a prison. Admiral Hyunwoo stood at the large window looking out at the stars, while Dr. Ji-hai and Captain Taemin examined every surface of their rooms for possible escape routes. The aliens had been polite but firm about their situation. They were honored guests who would remain on the station until humanity made its decision. Captain Taemin finished his inspection and sat down heavily in one of the living chairs. The walls appear to be made of the same organic material as the rest of the station. My equipment cannot even scratch the surface. The door has no visible controls and does not respond to any of my attempts to open it. Dr. Ji-hai looked up from her scanner readings. The organic nature of their technology is actually quite fascinating from a scientific perspective. It appears that everything on this station is essentially one large living organism. The walls, the floors, even the furniture are all connected to a central nervous system. That is very interesting, Doctor. But does it help us escape? Admiral Hyunwoo asked. Perhaps, if this station is truly a living organism, then it might be possible to disrupt its functions by targeting the right systems. But I would need access to their computer networks to understand how everything is connected. Meanwhile, far below, in the station's command center, Veltar was composing a message to the Confederation Council. He had never encountered a species quite like humans before, and was unsure how to proceed. The three representatives had shown none of the fear or submission that usually accompanied first contact with primitive species. Instead, they had displayed what could only be described as defiance. Quinda entered the command center carrying a data pad filled with analysis reports. The psychological evaluation of the human delegation is complete. The results are disturbing. Veltar looked up from his message. How so? All three subjects show extremely high levels of what our specialists call resistance markers. They display no fear of death, no willingness to submit to authority, and most concerning of all, they seem to view their current situation as a challenge to be overcome rather than a hopeless trap. That is unusual, Veltar admitted. Most species show significant psychological breakdown within the first few hours of containment. The humans appear to be adapting to their situation. Quinda activated her data pad and showed him the detailed scans. Look at their stress hormones. Rather than increasing due to fear and despair, their levels suggest they are entering what their species calls a combat state. They are preparing to fight even though they have no weapons and no apparent means of escape. Back in the human fleet, emergency meetings were being held aboard every ship. The disappearance of Admiral Hyunwoo and his diplomatic team had sent shockwaves through the entire expedition. Acting Admiral Da-Yun, who had been second in command of the fleet, was now faced with the most difficult decision in human history. Engineer Su Jin stood before the assembled ship commanders in the main briefing room of the Indomitable. The alien transmission was clear. We have 72 hours to decide whether humanity will submit to what they call pacification procedures or be eliminated as a threat to galactic peace. Commander Byung-ho of the heavy cruiser Defiant slammed his fist on the table. This is insane. They are threatening to commit genocide against our entire species unless we agree to let them change our fundamental nature. How is this even a choice? Because if we refuse, they will destroy us, replied Captain Min-ho of the science vessel Discovery. Their technology is far beyond ours. We have 47 ships against what appears to be the combined military might of multiple star systems. Acting Admiral Da-Un had been silent during the debate, but now she stood and addressed the room. I have been in contact with Earth Command. The decision has been made at the highest levels of government. Humanity will not submit to genetic modification or behavioral conditioning, regardless of the consequences. A murmur ran through the room as the full implications of this decision became clear. They were going to war against an enemy that vastly outmatched them in every measurable way. Sujin looked up from her technical displays. "Admiral, I have been analyzing the alien technology we observed during the diplomatic meeting. Their weapons and defenses appear to be designed for overwhelming technological superiority rather than actual combat. I do not think they have fought a real war in a very long time." "What are you suggesting?" Doan asked. "I am suggesting that they may not be prepared for an enemy that refuses to surrender. All of their previous conquests appear to have been achieved through intimidation and superior technology. They may not know how to fight an enemy that uses unconventional tactics." Back on the alien station, Captain Taemin had made an important discovery. While examining the wall surfaces in their quarters, he had noticed that certain sections showed slight variations in color and texture. Dr. Jihai's scans had revealed that these variations corresponded to nerve clusters in the station's organic structure. "If we can access one of these nerve clusters, we might be able to disrupt the station's control systems," Dr. Jihai explained. "The question is how to reach them without any cutting tools." Admiral Hyunwoo smiled grimly. "Captain, what is the first rule of survival training?" Taemin understood immediately. "Use whatever resources are available. Sir, the furniture in these rooms appears to have metal support structures underneath the organic covering. If we can access those structures..." Working together, the three humans began carefully dismantling one of the living chairs. The process was slow and difficult, but eventually they managed to extract several pieces of metal that could be used as improvised tools. Dr. Jihai used her scanner to guide them to the exact location of a major nerve cluster in the wall. Hours later, they had managed to create a small opening in the wall surface. Dr. Jihai carefully inserted her scanner probe into the opening and began downloading data from the station's nervous system. "I am getting massive amounts of information. The station's neural network is incredibly complex, but I think I can identify the key control systems." Captain Taemin kept watch at the door while Admiral Hyunwoo helped Dr. Jihai with her equipment. "How much longer do you need, Doctor?" "Just a few more minutes. I am mapping the entire station layout and identifying critical systems. If we can cause the right kind of disruption, we might be able to create enough chaos to escape." Their work was interrupted by the sound of the door beginning to open. Captain Taemin quickly moved to block the entrance while the other two, frantically, tried to conceal their improvised tools and cover the hole in the wall. Veltar entered the room followed by two guards. His crystalline features showed what might have been suspicion as he looked around the quarters. "I came to inform you that we have received a response from your fleet. They have requested additional time to consider our offer." Admiral Hyunwoo stood and faced the alien diplomat. "What was your response to their request?" "The Confederation Council does not negotiate with primitive species. Your fleet has 36 hours remaining to accept our terms. After that, more direct measures will be taken." Dr. Jihai stepped forward with her scanner still hidden behind her back. "What kind of direct measures?" Quinda appeared in the doorway, her weapons clearly visible. "The same measures that were taken with the Krathens and the other species that refused our guidance. Complete sterilization of all occupied worlds and the elimination of all space-based assets." The casual way she spoke about genocide sent chills through the human delegation. These aliens were not evil in the traditional sense, but their absolute certainty that they knew what was best for all other species made them perhaps even more dangerous than a purely malevolent enemy. After the aliens left, the humans resumed their work with renewed urgency. Dr. Jihai had managed to download the complete layout of the station and had identified several critical vulnerabilities. The station's power systems are distributed throughout the organic structure, but they all connect to a central control node. If we can reach that node and disrupt it, the entire station should experience cascading system failures. "Where is this control node?" Admiral Hyunwoo asked. Dr. Jihai consulted her downloaded data. "Approximately 2 kilometers from here in what appears to be the station's core section. The route would take us through several high-security areas." Captain Taemin studied the station layout. It would be a fighting retreat all the way. We would have to move fast and hope that the aliens are not prepared for close combat. Admiral Hyunwoo made the decision that would determine the fate of first contact between humanity and the galactic community. We do it. Even if we do not succeed, in escaping we can at least gather intelligence about their capabilities and transmit it to the fleet. The three humans spent the remaining hours before their escape attempt, preparing improvised weapons and planning their route through the station. Dr. Ji-hai had discovered that the organic walls were vulnerable to electrical disruption, which meant her scanner could be modified into a crude but effective weapon. Captain Taemin had fashioned several knives from the metal chair components, and Admiral Hyunwoo had created what amounted to an improvised explosive device using components from their communications equipment. The first alien guard never saw the attack coming. Captain Taemin moved with the fluid precision of a trained killer, his improvised knife finding the vulnerable nerve cluster in the guard's neck that Dr. Ji-hai had identified from her scans. The crystalline being collapsed without a sound, its weapon clattering to the organic floor of the corridor. Admiral Hyunwoo grabbed the fallen weapon while Dr. Ji-hai continued using her modified scanner to disrupt door controls and security systems. The alien weapon felt strange in his hands, more like a living creature than a tool, but it responded to his touch and began charging with deadly energy. "This way," Dr. Ji-hai whispered, consulting the station layout she had downloaded. "The central control node is through the next section, but we will have to pass through what appears to be a major security checkpoint." They moved through the corridors of the alien station like ghosts, using every trick of stealth and combat that human military training had taught them. The aliens had never faced enemies who could think tactically and adapt to changing circumstances. Their security systems were designed to contain passive prisoners, not determined warriors. Behind them, alarms began to sound throughout the station. The musical tones that served as the Confederation's alert system filled the air as security forces mobilized to deal with the escaped humans. But the aliens were discovering that chasing humans through their own station was like trying to catch smoke with their hands. Captain Taemin led them through maintenance passages that Dr. Ji-hai had identified from the station's neural network. The narrow spaces forced them to crawl, but they also provided cover from the main security forces. As they moved, they could hear the confused communications of their pursuers echoing through the walls. "How can three primitive beings cause so much disruption?" one voice asked in the musical language of the Confederation. "They are using tactics we have never encountered," came the reply. "They strike without warning and disappear before we can respond. Our security protocols are not designed for this type of threat." Dr. Ji-hai smiled grimly as she listened to the alien communications. "They are learning what every species that fought against humans learned eventually. We do not fight fair, we fight to win." Meanwhile, in the command center, Veltar and Quinda were watching displays that showed the chaos spreading throughout their perfect station. The three humans had somehow turned their containment into a nightmare of disrupted systems and confused security forces. "How is this possible?" Veltar demanded. "They are primitives with improvised weapons. Our technology should make them helpless." Quinda studied the tactical displays with growing concern. "They are not fighting like any species we have encountered before. Instead of trying to overpower our defenses, they are avoiding them entirely. They are using our own station against us." The truth was becoming clear to the military strategist. The Confederation had grown so accustomed to overwhelming technological superiority that they had forgotten how to fight against an enemy that refused to be overwhelmed. Every species they had previously encountered had either submitted immediately or tried to match their technology in direct combat. The humans were doing neither. Back in the maintenance tunnels, the human delegation reached the security checkpoint that guarded access to the station's core. Through a ventilation grate, they could see dozens of alien guards positioned at strategic points throughout a large chamber. The defenses looked impregnable, designed to stop any frontal assault. There, Dr. Ji-hai pointed to a massive organic pillar in the center of the chamber. "That is the central control node. If we can reach it and introduce the right kind of electromagnetic pulse, we can shut down the entire station." Admiral Hyunwoo studied the guard positions and began formulating a plan. We cannot fight through all of them, but we do not have to. Captain, can you create a distraction on the far side of the chamber? Taman grinned and checked his remaining improvised explosives. I can do better than that, sir. I can create panic. The plan they developed was simple and desperate, but it played to human strengths while exploiting alien weaknesses. The Confederation guards were trained to respond to direct threats and overwhelming force, not to the kind of psychological warfare that humans had perfected through millennia of conflict. Captain Taman slipped away through the ventilation system, while Admiral Hyunwoo and Dr. Ji-hai prepared for their assault on the control node. The station around them continued to echo with the sounds of security forces searching for them, but the aliens were always one step behind their quarry. The explosion, when it came, was perfectly timed and positioned for maximum psychological impact. Taman had placed his improvised bomb in a section of the chamber that would cause spectacular but relatively harmless damage. The blast sent crystalline debris flying across the room and triggered every alarm system in the station. But more importantly, it created exactly the kind of chaos and confusion that humans thrive in while aliens fear. The Confederation guards immediately converged on the explosion site, abandoning their defensive positions to investigate the threat. They had been trained to respond to attacks, not to ignore them while protecting a specific location. Admiral Hyunwoo and Dr. Ji-hai dropped through the ventilation grate and sprinted across the now undefended chamber toward the central control node. Behind them, they could hear alien voices shouting in confusion and panic as they tried to understand what was happening to their perfect station. Dr. Ji-hai reached the control node and immediately began connecting her modified scanner to the organic surface. I need 60 seconds to introduce the electromagnetic pulse into the station's nervous system. Admiral Hyunwoo took up a defensive position between her and the scattered guards, the alien weapon ready in his hands. Take all the time you need, Doctor. I will handle our friends. The first alien guard to spot them raised his weapon and fired, but his shot went wide because he had never been trained to fire under stress. Admiral Hyunwoo's return shot was precise and deadly, dropping the guard immediately. The human had learned to fight in wars where missing meant dying, while the alien had learned to fight in training exercises where missing meant trying again. More guards began to converge on their position, but they moved with the careful precision of beings who had never faced truly dangerous opponents. Captain Taman emerged from the smoke and debris of his explosion and attacked them from behind, his improvised weapons finding vulnerable spots that the guards had never needed to protect. 30 seconds, Dr. Ji-hai called out as her scanner interfaced with the station's neural network. Around them, the chamber filled with the sound of weapons fire and combat, but it was unlike any battle the station had ever witnessed. The humans fought with a desperation and ferocity that the aliens could not comprehend or counter. The electromagnetic pulse, when it finally discharged into the station's nervous system, had an effect far beyond what any of them had expected. The entire massive structure convulsed like a living creature in pain, which in many ways it was. Lights failed throughout the station, gravity systems fluctuated wildly, and the carefully controlled atmosphere began venting into space. We need to get to the shuttle bay, Admiral Hyunwoo shouted over the chaos. This station is dying, and we need to get off before it takes us with it. They fought their way through corridors filled with confused and panicked aliens who had never experienced system failures of this magnitude. The Confederation's perfect technology was revealing its fundamental weakness. It had never been tested against enemies who were willing to break things rather than capture them intact. Dr. Ji-hai led them through passages that were now lit only by emergency lighting, consulting her downloaded maps while the station shuddered around them. Behind them, they could hear the alien security forces finally beginning to organize a proper pursuit, but it was too late. The humans had accomplished what they came to do. The shuttle bay was in chaos when they arrived. Emergency systems were trying to contain atmosphere leaks while automated systems attempted to restore power and gravity. Their shuttle sat exactly where they had left it, but the docking clamps that held it in place were now controlled by failing computer systems. Captain Taman ran to the manual controls and began the process of releasing their ship, while Admiral Hyunwoo and Dr. Ji-hai held off the alien guards who were finally catching up to them. The firefight in the shuttle bay was brief but intense, with energy weapons leaving scorch marks on the organic walls and filling the air with the smell of burned flesh. "Got it," Taemin called out as the docking clamps released. "Everyone aboard now." They scrambled into the shuttle as alien reinforcements poured into the bay. Dr. Jihai was the last aboard, pausing only long enough to leave behind a small device she had constructed from her remaining equipment. "What is that?" Admiral Hyunwoo asked as the shuttle's engines fired and they began to pull away from the dying station. "A transmitter," she replied with satisfaction. "It will broadcast everything we learned about Confederation technology and tactics to our fleet. Even if we do not make it back, our people will know how to fight them." The shuttle burst out of the station's docking bay and into open space just as massive explosions began tearing through the structure behind them. 6 months had passed since the destruction of Harmonic Convergence Station, and the galaxy had changed in ways that none of the Confederation species could have imagined. What had begun as a simple evaluation of a primitive species had become a nightmare that spread across dozens of star systems. Veltar stood in the ruins of what had once been the Confederation's regional command center on Nexus Prime. The beautiful crystalline structures that had housed the government for over 1,000 years now lay broken and abandoned. Through the shattered walls, he could see the remains of the orbital defense platforms that had been considered impregnable until the humans arrived. The attack on Nexus Prime had come without warning, and from a direction that military strategists had declared impossible. Human ships had emerged from the gravity well of the system's gas giant, using its magnetic field to mask their approach. They had not tried to capture the planet or destroy its population. Instead, they had systematically dismantled every piece of military and communication infrastructure before disappearing back into deep space. "The reports from the outer systems continue to arrive," Quinda said as she entered the ruined chamber. Her crystalline skin showed stress fractures that had appeared over the past months as she struggled to comprehend an enemy that refused to fight, according to any known rules of warfare. "The humans have destroyed another supply convoy, and 3 more communication relays." Veltar turned from the broken window to face his colleague. "How many systems have gone silent this week?" 7. "The humans are not trying to conquer territory or capture resources. They are simply cutting the connections that hold our civilization together. Without communication and supply lines, each world is becoming isolated and vulnerable." The Ba strategy was brilliant in its simplicity and terrifying in its effectiveness. Rather than trying to match the Confederation's superior technology ship for ship, the humans had chosen to attack the very foundations that made galactic civilization possible. They struck at supply convoys, communication relays, and transport hubs before vanishing into the void like ghosts. On the bridge of the human cruiser Defiant, Commander Byung-ho studied the latest intelligence reports from across Confederation space. The dispersed human fleet had been operating independently for months, but their coordination remained perfect, despite having no central command structure. Each human commander understood the mission and was free to execute it in whatever way seemed most effective. "Sir, we have intercepted communications from the Xelon system," reported his communications officer. "It appears that 3 separate species have declared independence from the Confederation in the past week." Byung-ho smiled grimly. "The cracks are beginning to show. How many worlds have rebelled so far?" 43 confirmed, with reports of unrest in dozens more. The humans are not the only ones fighting the Confederation anymore. This had been perhaps the most unexpected development of the war. As the human attacks exposed the weaknesses in Confederation control, other species began to remember what they had been before their pacification. The genetic modifications that had made them docile and compliant were still in place, but the desire for freedom that had been suppressed was beginning to resurface. Dr. Jihai worked in her laboratory aboard the science vessel Discovery, analyzing samples of Confederation biotechnology that had been captured during various raids. Her research had revealed something that changed everything they thought they knew about their enemies. "Admiral, you need to see this," she said as Admiral Hyun-woo entered her lab. The Admiral had resumed command of the scattered fleet through a network of encrypted communications that the aliens had proven unable to crack. "What have you found, Doctor?" Jihai activated a holographic display that showed the genetic structure of several Confederation species. The pacification process they use is not permanent. The genetic modifications can be reversed with the right treatment. More importantly, I have discovered that many of the member species were not originally peaceful herbivores as they claimed. Admiral Hyunwoo studied the display with interest. What do you mean? I mean that several of these species show genetic markers indicating they were once predators just like humans. The Confederation has been systematically converting warrior races into docile servants for thousands of years. The Kelvari, for example, were originally pack hunters with technological capabilities that rivaled our own. This revelation changed the nature of the conflict entirely. The humans were not fighting to protect just their own freedom, but the freedom of dozens of species that had been enslaved and modified against their will. The Confederation was not a peaceful alliance of harmonious species, but a totalitarian empire that maintained control through genetic manipulation. On a small research station hidden in an asteroid field, Captain Tae-min met with representatives of 3 rebel species that had contacted the human fleet through secret channels. The meeting had been arranged through a network of underground communications that had developed as the Confederation's control began to break down. The Kelvari representative was a tall, muscular being whose appearance had been gradually reverting to its original form as the pacification treatments wore off. "Your species has given us something we had forgotten existed," he said in a voice that was becoming stronger and more confident with each passing day. "Hope. We did not start this war to free other species," Tae-min replied honestly. "We started it to preserve our own freedom. But if our fight helps others reclaim theirs, then we are willing to help." The Terran delegate, whose people had been among the first to be pacified by the Confederation, leaned forward with eyes that burned with newly rediscovered anger. "We have weapons caches hidden throughout our home system. If you can provide us with the genetic treatments your Dr. Ji-hai has developed, we can begin the process of liberating our own people." The third representative belonged to a species called the Mordak, who had been warriors and explorers before their pacification. "Our shipyards still exist, but they have been converted to produce Confederation vessels. With the right coordination, we could capture enough ships to equip a real fleet." Captain Tae-min smiled as he looked at these beings who were rediscovering their warrior heritage. "Gentlemen, I think we can arrange something that will be mutually beneficial." Back on Nexus Prime, Veltar received a communication that he had been dreading. The Confederation High Council was recalling all diplomatic personnel and declaring a state of total war against humanity and its allies. The peaceful resolution that he had spent his entire career promoting was officially abandoned. "The Council has authorized the use of planet-killer weapons," Quinda reported as she read the orders. "Every world that harbors humans or provides them with aid is to be sterilized completely." Veltar felt something that he had never experienced before: doubt about the righteousness of his civilization. "Quinda, do you remember what we were told about the Crethans? How they were dangerous predators who threatened galactic peace?" "Of course. They were eliminated 300 years ago because they refused to accept pacification. I have been reviewing the historical records. The Crethans were not predators. They were explorers and scientists who wanted to maintain their independence. We destroyed them not because they were dangerous, but because they would not submit to our control." Quinda stared at her colleague in shock. Such thoughts were not supposed to be possible for pacified species, but the stress of the war and the examples set by the humans were causing cracks in the mental conditioning that had controlled Confederation citizens for millennia. The final battle, when it came, was not the massive fleet engagement that military strategists on both sides had expected. Instead, it was a meeting between Admiral Hyunwoo and the surviving members of the Confederation High Council on a neutral station that had once been a symbol of their empire's power. The humans arrived not as conquerors, but as negotiators backed by a coalition of newly freed species. The Kelvari had reclaimed their warrior heritage and now served as shock troops for the rebellion. The Terran had used their hidden weapons to liberate their home system and were providing intelligence about Confederation military assets. The Mordak had captured enough shipyards to begin producing vessels designed for freedom rather than oppression. "You have won," the senior council member admitted, as he faced Admiral Hyunwoo across the negotiating table. Our empire is collapsing, and our member species are abandoning us. What do you want from us? Admiral Hyunwoo looked at the alien leader with something that might have been pity. We want what we have always wanted. The right to exist as we are, without interference, from those who think they know what is best for us. And what of the Confederation? What of the peace we have maintained for thousands of years? Dr. Ji Hai spoke from her position beside the Admiral. Your peace was built on lies and genetic slavery. True peace can only exist between species that choose it freely, not species that have been modified to be incapable of violence. The negotiations that followed lasted for weeks and resulted in the dissolution of the Galactic Harmony Confederation and the establishment of something entirely new, the Free Worlds Alliance. This new organization was based on voluntary cooperation between sovereign,